Hi, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of M365 Voice. My name is Mike Madarami.
I'm Sarah Ozzy.
And I'm Antonio Mayo.
And it's been a while since we have had questions or picked some questions from the jar. We've had a lot of different guests. We had picked topics ourselves. I guess it's time to go back to the old habits and see what we have.
It is, and I had to bust back open the jar for today. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Surprise us.
Surprise us. When would you use the new colored folder feature in OneDrive for Business, and is it worthwhile to use?
I've seen a lot of debate about
I like this question
on social media.
Huh.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have two colored folder. Should we define what it is first for those who may not have seen or experienced it yet, or maybe noticed that it was there?
Absolutely. I think we should. Sure, I can take a stab at it.
Yeah.
So recently, I think, I don't know how long ago, 3-4 months ago, 5 months ago, Microsoft announced this new feature in OneDrive. Eventually, it started with OneDrive, and it is available right now also in SharePoint and Microsoft Teams Files tab. When you create a folder, you have the option to give it a color, and you can pick out of 16 colors, a palette of 16 colors, and you can pick that color, and that folder will be colored that color. And you can also go back to existing folders that had the traditional yellow color, and you can change the color of existing folders as well. So that new feature was available late spring, I think, early summer.
And then I think it was still rolling out, I think, at least in some of my tenants. I saw it sooner rather than later, so some people may have noticed it more recently, but there's been a lot of color hype about this one. I think it's really pretty to demo. I think it's pretty to look at, but I think it's an interesting dialogue about the colored folders and the difference maker in it.
I agree. It's not, I can't say I hated the old way, but if you have used a lot of folders in your OneDrive or your SharePoint, sometimes it's hard to find that specific folder. Even though you can go through, follow the alphabet and try and find that folder, you just don't see it sometimes. I think it's a good way to distinguish different categories based on the color.
I think that's the way I'm using it right now, is in many of my repositories, I've amassed a large number of folders over time. And they're not content that I want to get rid of, but with that amassment of content and folders, and I'm not a huge user of folders, kind of like judicious use of some folders, it gets hard to find the thing that you're looking for, the really important thing at the time. So I have started to color code the ones that are the highest priority in a particular repository, in a library, or in OneDrive, for example, just to kind of direct the eye there, make it easier for me to get there quickly so that I don't have to sort through this big list. That's kind of my initial use case for it.
I love color coding. We talked about this before on the podcast, and I know I have blogs on it. I have my whole work calendar color coded. I have my Outlook tasks that I use color coded, and I use the color to denote types of work. So I might put things like leadership meetings or leadership tasks are in red, and team meetings are in green, or one-on-one meetings with my team are in green. And I have different colors that I use. I think I've kind of ratified it down to using about 6 to 8 colors, because any more than that is so many colors, I forget what they mean. So I kind of use them to denote things, and I love it. I can, without reading any words, I can see at a glance what kind of day I'm going to have based on what the colors are. And I have colors I prefer to see in my day, and I have colors that I don't prefer to see in my day. And the same thing with Outlook tasks. So I would think the same thing could apply here. I don't know that I would color every OneDrive folder. I might save the colors for the ones that are the most impactful or meaningful.
And I color code every single email. So with Outlook categories, I have similar 6 to 9 or 6 to 8 categories that I've used for years, for at least 15, if not more years, to categorize all my emails. And it's often based on the color. I can sort by that and I can see, okay, all the red ones are the really important actions. The blue ones are the things that I'm waiting for a reply on. So I haven't gotten to the point yet of doing that in OneDrive folders or SharePoint folders, but I could see going that way, to your point, Sarah. The color coding across different workloads, I think, is helpful to direct your eye to something or be able to quickly at a glance see what's my day going to be like, or what's the important stuff in this repository.
Exactly. I have started using it a bit in my OneDrive. Definitely, I'm going to be using it more, just trying to find the time to spend the time and color code what I need to color code. But question to both of you, when it comes to, okay, OneDrive is fine, it's a personal space, you can color code whatever you want, and you can decide the colors based on however you manage your own personal data. When it comes to SharePoint and Teams, a lot of organizations would like to have consistency typically. When we deploy intranet sites, when we deploy multiple open sites, communication sites, team sites, they like to have a specific structure. Do you think color code folder should be introduced as well to this kind of quote unquote like governance as well?
Mm.
So I can see that happening. Like the way you're talking about that, Mike, reminds me when every project that we do here at my company, we create a team for.
Right.
And in those teams, we usually have a fairly standard set of folders that we end up with. I end up with one for the contract documents, another for client provided content, another for deliverables, another for working this kind of thing. I could see introducing colors into those as a standard thing, so that as we create new projects, we create that standard set of folders and they're colored a certain way. That way, again, we kind of can prioritize them almost based on color or understand at a glance what they mean.
I agree. I think it is a good idea to have that kind of standardizations, even not only from the folder names or metadata or channels, having that color also. Yeah. It's a comfort level for users that they know exactly where to go.
I think the education around that and the conforming to that, or users thinking about it, is, I think, going to be interesting. I think less is more. I think about it almost like, and Antonio, we've had this discussion many times. It's almost like sensitivity labeling of files from an information protection perspective. Less is more in terms of quantity, because otherwise it just gets overwhelming. And those color-coded folders, well, we have to admit that some people are not going to be able to distinguish the colors at all, right? Because there are some of us who, visual wise, they either don't pay attention to color, or they can't differentiate the colors, or they can't see the difference in the colors. So it wouldn't be uniform. But I still think fewer colors and more being really discreet about the color choices that you make in terms of number of them is a good idea.
I agree. And like the sensitivity label conversation you brought up, kind of, and I'm sitting on the fence a little bit. I'm playing devil's advocate here, where with sensitivity labels and the fact that you can color code them, Sarah, you and I have talked about how I don't initially color code them when rolling them out because of, visual challenges that some people have in seeing them, and because of cultural challenges, some colors, because some colors do have very strong cultural connotations. So often when we're rolling out sensitivity to clients, we avoid the color coding to start. It feels like it's a useful tool in some cases. A lot of organizations use, red, yellow, green for those. But because of those concerns, we do avoid it in those cases. And I could see maybe that happening with folder coloring as well.
And you have to keep in mind that different colors have very different connotations to different groups, culturally, geographically, in every way. Colors are not always neutral, if that makes sense.
Very true. Very, very true. Yeah. Also to note that if you change a color to if you have subfolders, it does not replicate there. So
Gotcha.
you always have to pick a color for each folder at each level.
But you can choose a color for subfolders, but you have to do it manually. It doesn't trickle down.
That is correct.
And you can change the color after the fact as well. You don't
You
only pick it on selecting on creating the folder, right?
That's correct. Yes.
So it actually happened to me for the very first time, and it was yesterday with Mike. That Mike is the first person in the world to ever ask me what color I wanted a folder to be while on a meeting. Because we had a meeting and we were creating a folder to plan a workshop for an upcoming conference, and you created a new folder and you asked me what color I wanted. And I think I said, and I paused because I had nobody's ever asked me that question before. And then you picked a color because I did not answer quickly enough. So for everyone watching, sooner or later, somebody's going to ask you. And if you don't have
That's
an
right.
answer, they're just going to pick a color.
And the color I picked related to the event color. So I related, so I picked I don't remember what it was, the burgundy color, a purple color. That it came to my mind, that color, because we were talking about a specific event that has that color theme. So that's how my brain went into picking that color, that specific color.
Interesting. It's funny, we first saw this colored folder feature announced at MVP Summit earlier this year during one of the keynotes where they were showing all the features, new features around SharePoint, OneDrive, I think Teams was part of it too. And the feature that literally got the most applause was the colored folder feature.
That's correct. That's right.
But I think back to my early days in computing, years and years and years ago. So in another time, in the land of the dinosaurs, when Macs first came out. So think back to like late 80s, early 90s. They actually had colored folders on Macs and the Mac OS and the early Mac OSs, where the older a folder got, the more yellow it became. The idea being that, as paper ages, it yellows. I remember this. I remember this being in the UI guidelines.
That's pretty cool feature.
Yeah. So this reminded me of that when I saw it. I'm like, that'd be awesome if they did that, if they suddenly did that now, if you could do kind of this automatic in the future, maybe Microsoft will do this sometime in the future, I don't know, a feature idea, but some automatic rules around coloring folders. That'd be kind of neat to see.
That would be actually, I like that.
Yeah, this did get a lot of feedback, and I think people were eagerly awaiting this. I think it looks really cool, and I think it can be really helpful to distinguish different folders. Coming from, and I haven't put it into practice clearly across OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams in a way that I need to, but for someone who likes to have every single thing on our calendar color-coded and all of our tasks color-coded, I don't know that I'm going to jump into color coding my OneDrive folders. I think I'd be more likely to color my folders based on the ones I need to stand out from the norm. I'm interested, do you think you'd color code all of your folders or just a small percentage of them?
Right now, for me, it's a very small percentage. It's exactly what you said. It's the one that's the most important to me right now, or the 1, 2, or 3 that are most important for something I'm working on right now. I want to prioritize them. I want to make it easy for my eye to go to them and to get to them really quickly.
Same. I would pick probably a handful of folders to color code them, and that would be it. Maybe inside them will have more. Same thing. I will pick and choose some other folders, but I don't think I'll do it all.
Yeah.
It would be also nice to have the color coded folders on the synced folders on your desktop. So your
and those don't come through on synced folders.
Yeah.
Do they come through on the mobile apps?
Good question.
Good question. I don't know. We can. I have no idea. I doubt it.
It's an interesting thought. The synced folders, having them not come through on synced folders, I can understand how that's a really big lift to make that happen. Just from a level of Windows coding and engagement. But here's the other question then. For OneDrive, just talking about OneDrive specifically for a moment, how often do you go to OneDrive in your browser versus using the sync client? I use the sync client 98% of the time, at least.
I am the same. I'm like maybe 99.5%. I barely go to the browser. The only time I go to the browser, if I don't have, well, I always have Teams open. The only time that I use the browser or Teams is if I want to go and look at the shared documents, whether shared by me or shared with me. That's one of the very, very few reasons I go to the browser.
Yeah, I would agree. I use Sync Client in my desktop probably 95% of the time. There were a few instances where I've gone to the web browser to look at OneDrive, but it's usually because I've already have a web browser open to my M365 tenant, and it's just really quick to go to the launcher and bring up OneDrive.
The answer is that the colored folders do not come through in mobile.
I just tried it, and yes, there's still the yellow one.
Yep, it's still yellow. So in the Sync client, yellow, mobile yellow. So then we're really talking about the UI experience, which I got to be honest, having a colored folder in Teams to me is much more valuable than in OneDrive, but I use OneDrive in the browser so much less frequently.
Yeah. I would agree. I think we'll see it more in Teams for that reason.
Very true.
Yeah.
Well, it was a really good question. I love the topic, actually. And happy that we used it yesterday, you and I, Sarah.
I would actually love it. Other than you threw me for a loop on that one, not intended for Microsoft Loop, but I'd actually be interested in hearing from our listeners on this one, because I think that there are a lot of business use cases for using colored folders. And I'm sure that a lot of the positives and the potential trip hazards on it have not occurred to us yet, because we haven't used it long enough.
Agreed.
Yep. Saw a lot of debate on social media around some people thinking it was kind of a gimmicky feature, not very useful, and then other people thinking it's really useful. So yeah, it'd be really good to hear from people on when would they use it? What are the use cases they think are useful for it?
Absolutely. Just let us know.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for watching. It was awesome to get together again and answer some questions, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.